You'll be back to the Golden Silent Films podcast in just one moment, but I did want to talk to you about Tom Was Here on YouTube. It's a YouTube variety channel, and it's my channel. What started out as a travel vlog of which we'd cover all types of different locations, from haunted houses, to hotel rooms, to museums, to historical locations, to movie filming locations, and everywhere in between. But it's not just that alone. We've also done weight loss journeys, mystery boxes, trading cards, collectibles, card grading, collectibles grading, and everything in between there. There's a wide variety of different topics on my channel, and there's really something for everyone. You may not necessarily like every video I put out, but the hope is that you'd like at least one video I put out. So make sure to check out Tom Was Here on YouTube. You can search in YouTube under the @ symbol, Tom Was Here on YouTube, or just search Tom Was Here. It should come up under that. You can also check my Facebook page, Tom Was Here on YouTube, or Tom Was Here PGH on Instagram. So make sure to follow me there and say that the Golden Silent Films podcast sent you, and just remember that my name is Tom and I was here, and you are listening to the Golden Silent Films podcast.
I've said this on the show before, and it bears repeating. Every September 29th, Silent Movie Day provides an opportunity for academics, aficionados, programmers, archivists, and enthusiasts to gather around their shared appreciation of the unique period of visual arts and culture that was silent film. It also is a time to rally around the silent film initiatives for preservation and access, as well as raise awareness of the small percentage of these films that remain from this period of motion picture industry history. And what better way to celebrate Silent Movie Day than by partaking in another incredible Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival? So, enjoy it with us, won't you? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 5th season of the Golden Silent Films podcast, a silver screen time machine, if you will. Thanks for that one, Wendy. For the weary cinephiles who viewed their way through the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival. This episode also serves as an opportunity for those who are unable to attend to have a chance to live vicariously through us. This episode, much like last year's, will serve as a travelogue of sorts, navigating a week's worth of silent movie action in the Steel City. Or should I say, the Silent City. Also, while we're zipping around town, we will be celebrating the aforementioned Silent Movie Day. Before we shuffle off to screens all over the great city of Pittsburgh, let's give the usual Golden Silent Films podcast social media hangouts. As usual, head on over to Golden Silence Cast on Instagram for up-to-date info about this little podcast. And for all of you folks on Bluesky, just follow at Golden Silence Cast or just search for Golden Silence Cast, and we will blue sky right at you. It's a new venture for us here, and we look forward to seeing you all there. We're having a lot of fun and meeting cool folks on Bluesky. It's been a really awesome and invigorating experience, and really has been a refreshing social media experience. Now, all of those screen names and sites will be in the episode description in case you are interested in checking us out. We would love to have you creeping along with us. At this social spaces, you'll get behind-the-scenes pics and info, upcoming episode reveals, and other fun film-related materials. And cool photos of our official Pittsburgh podcasts, Gizmo and Soda. Also, if you're listening to this program on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Amazon Music, please leave comments, reviews, ratings, or both. Our show has been around for 5 years now, and we have collected a mere 15 reviews on iTunes. We would love to see our numbers keep growing, and you awesome silent film fans out there can make it happen. All of those ratings and reviews help greatly. Live your best review-leaving life and help our show grow and reach fellow silent film fans. Now, dropping those reviews gives us more exposure in the world of podcasts and lets us know how we can improve. As always, we are grateful for the feedback and always want to bring you the best show humanly possible. And please subscribe to the Golden Silent Films podcast. While our output can be sketchy and irregular, if you are subscribed, you will never miss an episode, and the moment new content drops, it'll go straight to your listening device of choice. Now, we are starting our 5th season here, and we don't want you to miss a second of the action. And for YouTube, you know those magic words. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. Now, the bread and butter of this podcast is the humble yet noble silent film. But it's the live events and human interactions that really make this show worth making. I mean, we get chills sitting in packed theaters, everyone eagerly anticipating and sharing in the silent film experience. And those movie-watching endorphins really kick in when you hear the live music accompanying these great historic films. Now, the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival is an amazing event with its beginnings tied to National Silent Movie Day, which is celebrated every September 29th. If you had forgotten, Silent Movie Day is an annual celebration of silent movies, a vastly misunderstood and neglected cinematic art form. The folks at National Silent Movie Day believe that silent motion pictures are a vital, beautiful, and often powerful part of film history, and they are united with others in the goal to advocate for their presentation and preservation. Now, this film fest would not exist without the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society. If you are unaware, or outside of Western Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society, or PSFS, was founded in 2013 to help foster and promote silent film exhibitions with live musical accompaniment in Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania. Its mission includes advocating for celluloid film exhibition and preservation, and to serve communities in Western Pennsylvania as a resource for information on how to properly care for celluloid films of all kinds, both silent and sound. I mean, this is a great organization that really believes in the magic and historical value of these classics of film. Now, if there's any place in America worthy of having a silent movie film festival, Pittsburgh has all those credentials necessary. According to the PSFS, most Pittsburghers do not realize the city's important historical place in cinema history. Pittsburgh is the birthplace of the silent movie theater. In 1897, working with his father's company, Harris Comedy and Specialty Company, John Harris showed Pittsburgh's first motion picture. In 1905, Harris and Harry Davis transformed a storefront on Smithfield Street in downtown Pittsburgh into the Nickelodeon, the world's first theater dedicated solely to the exhibition of motion pictures. Now, in addition to being the birthplace of the silent movie theater, the Steel City is the birthplace of many a silent star. The PSFS continues, Pittsburgh was also the birthplace of many silent movie industry stars of the day, including Adolphe Menjou, Olive Thomas, Thomas Meighan, William Powell, Maurice and Dolores Costello, Lillian Russell, David O. Selznick, and Lois Weber. The festival will celebrate many of these figures and others in future programs. Now, the theme of this year's week-long celebration of silent cinema is the 100-year anniversary of a number of these classics. In the year of our Lord, 1924, there were a slew of great movies making their public debuts. From drama to fantasy to documentary, comedy, and horror, the moviegoer of 24 really got to experience so many emotions. And now, the modern moviegoer will be able to feel all of those same thrills, chills, and laughs. Do you want to be a part of next year's festivities or just want to keep tabs on the goings-on with the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society? Well, head on over to pittsburghsilentfilmsociety.org. There you will get great Pittsburgh cinematic history content and news like Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival announcements. Much like last year, we were again, unfortunately, unable to attend every event on offer. As much as we wanted to, seeing everything was, a little bit out of our reach. And Mother Nature certainly had a hand in keeping us from a couple films late in the fest. Not to make you outside of Pittsburgh folks jealous, but here is the lineup for the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival's events that we were unable to attend. So let's start the breakdown portion of this episode by talking about the films that we did actually, unfortunately, have to miss. Just because we couldn't make it, though, each of these screenings still deserves a little bit of podcast love. Now, the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival opened up appropriately enough on National Silent Movie Day, which is September 29th, 2024. The festival started with a great film, the Harold Lloyd classic Hot Water from 1924. This was a co-production of PATOS, aka the Pittsburgh Area Theater Organ Society, and happened at Keystone Oaks High School. The screenings at Keystone Oaks are always super cool because they usually feature live Wurlitzer theater organ accompaniment. And that was again the case here, with the accompaniment by Peter Krasinski. Screenings here are always a great opportunity to see the only remaining theater organ in operation in Pittsburgh. So, as much as I wanted to, we actually had to miss it. But it sounded like it was a phenomenal event. Now, the second screening we were unable to attend came on Wednesday, October 2nd. The film playing this evening was 1924's Michael, a German silent drama directed by Carl Theodor Dreyer. This screening went down at the historic Harris Theater in downtown Pittsburgh. As a Pittsburgher, the Harris Theater cannot be recommended enough. It's such a cool venue with so much history to it. And this screening sounded especially worthwhile as it had live accompaniment by Sean Allen Spencer. Now, the screening of Strike from 1924-1925 was the third showing we had to miss, but it was for great reasons. This Friday, October 4th screening was presented by Pittsburgh Sound and Image and took place at the new Glitterbox Theater. This Soviet silent propaganda film, directed and edited by Sergei Eisenstein, was presented as a 16mm film with original live score by the Ill-Fitting Party and Body of Research. Now, why we were unable to go to this event was because it was sold out. It is just amazing to see the appetite for silent films is so strong that screenings and events are getting to sellout territory. It is really, really cool. Now, as much as we love the Harris Theater, we had to also miss a Buster Keaton twin bill there on October 6th. This double feature would be the closing event of the 2024 edition of the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival. Is there any better way to send off a silent film fest than with The Navigator and Sherlock Jr. back-to-back? I would say that's about as perfect of an ending as you can get. Now, as far as musical accompaniment, The Navigator had live music provided by the Pittsburgh Film Orchestra, and Sherlock Jr. getting the live musical treatment from Tom Roberts, whom we talked about and with in previous episodes. This is a great send-off, leaving us eagerly anticipating doing it all over again in 2025. And also, it's a great way to celebrate Buster Keaton's 129th birthday weekend. So, with all the things we didn't do out of the way, let's get to all the great films and events we did manage to get to. And the lineup we were able to cover was great because only one of the films on display was a movie we had not seen previously. So, of the 5 events we got to, 4 were completely new to us. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that is a pretty good ratio of old stuff to new. And not only are there a lot of films new to us, but a number of the venues we will be catching these films in were new to us as well. Now, despite having just hyped up the fact that we were checking out so many new locations, our first stop actually was quite a familiar one. Now, our first event of the festival started with a return to the always fantastic Mount Lebanon Public Library. This screening of the Lon Chaney classic He Who Gets Slapped from 1924 was presented by the Dennis Theater and featured live musical accompaniment from the incredibly talented Andrew Laswell. Director Victor Sjostrom is a favorite around the offices of the Golden Silent Films podcast, and this is one of his finest. Thomas Gladitz, in an essay on silentfilm.org, writes, "Seeking a change of pace from his already successful career as a Swedish director and actor, Victor Sjostrom arrived in New York in January of 1923 at the invitation of Goldwyn Pictures. Sjostrom's intention was to study American production methods and to involve himself in a film or two. The Swede never thought to stay in America for very long." Now, Gladitz continues, "By the spring of 1924, however, when notable actors, directors, and producers gathered for a celebration of the merger of Goldwyn with Metro and Mayer companies, Sjostrom was in the thick of things. By then he had anglicized his name to Seastrom and had directed Name the Man in 1924, a popular and critically acclaimed film for Goldwyn. Admired by newly appointed MGM production head Irving Thalberg, Seastrom was chosen to direct the company's first film, a prestige production on which the studio's fortunes rode. And that film was He Who Gets Slapped. Now, I love this movie. It's a triumph on so many levels and never fails to bring a tear to my eye. After years of home viewing, seeing it with the sold-out crowd only made the film's emotional impact that much greater. He Who Gets Slapped occupies a special place in film history. When you are at your next trivia night and when someone asks you the very first MGM production, now you know. So turning back to Thomas Gladitz, we read, He Who Gets Slapped was in production between June 17th and July 28th, 1924. It ran 7 reels and, according to its copyright registration, featured amber-tinted sequences. He Who Gets Slapped was the first production of the newly formed MGM, but not its first release. The film was held back to benefit by a holiday release, opening on November 3rd, 1924, at the Capitol Theater in New York City. MGM promoted its first release vigorously, if somewhat inaccurately, with a campaign that billed the film as a big production of circus life. The film set a one-day world record with $15,000 in ticket sales, a one-week record of $71,900, and a 2-week record of $129,574. Shostrom and Lon Chaney came together to create an emotional piece of art in this film. The movie carries all the tragedy of a Greek tale or a Shakespearean play all inside the three-ring circus. There are so many cool visuals in this flick that really heighten the tension. Seeing the crowd in awe of what they were seeing on screen was really a magical experience. Now, He Who Gets Slapped is a movie worthy of its own full-length episode, but for this bite-sized chat, we can't move on without talking about the man of 1,000 faces himself. While his makeup oftentimes gets the praise, Lon Chaney is a crazy good actor. He manages to convey so many different emotions throughout this film. It's really impossible to not be emotionally connected to the tragic clown he portrays. It really is a tour de force. Writer Ishan Kobach writes, Chaney's typically hypnotic performance adds touches of genuine pain to a film that tends towards self-consciousness. He is portrayed in medium shots where his eyes drain of empathy and fill with despair and deranged insanity in real time. If the film's study of the origins of mankind is anyone's, it is Shostrom's, a dark and magnificent dissection. In an article from the New York Times on December 7, 1924, we read, Seastrom was like a poet in the mood to write his song, or a short story writer with the full idea mapped out in his mind. He Who Gets Slapped offered him his greatest opportunity, and he took it. And instead of being laughed at, he who has been slapped laughed at the dollars. New York Times reviewer and Golden Silent Films podcast favorite Morden Hall gave perhaps the most glowing review we've ever read from him. While we often love his passive-aggressive shenanigans, it's pretty amazing to see a review like this spring from his pen or typewriter. Hall, in the November 10th, 1924 edition of the New York Times, writes, At the Capitol this week, there is a picture which defies one to write about it without indulging in superlatives. It is a shadow drama so beautifully told, so flawlessly directed, that we imagine that it will be held up as a model by all producers. Throughout its length, there is not an instant of ennui, not a second one wants to lose. It held the spectator spellbound yesterday afternoon, the last fade-out being the signal for a hearty round of applause. This celluloid masterpiece is Victor Seastrom's picturization of Leonid Andreev's play He Who Gets Slapped. Is that kind of review and high praise from Morden Hall a sign of being in an alternate reality? Left is right, up is down. Have we knowingly crossed into an opposite world? No, He Who Gets Slapped is just that dang great. Now, Thomas Gladditt sums up this film when he writes, Today, some silent films are remembered for their historical importance, some for their artistic value, and still others because a particular actor or director played a role in their creation. He Who Gets Slapped, a singular and even profound work, possesses each of these cinematic virtues. It stands as one of the great films of the silent era. And before we move on, I just wanted to talk about the musical performance by Andrew Laswell. His talent and ability were a perfect fit for this film. His accompaniment really added another dimension to the screening. And if I remember correctly, he was new to the film accompaniment game. So kudos to Andrew Laswell out there for making the screening of this film something special. What a great way to start our silent film adventures, and that would be followed up by another great film, but unlike He Who Gets Slapped, this one was new to us. While we had to miss one Conrad Veidt picture during the festival, were we not, faithful listeners out there? All was not lost. What we missed in not seeing the Hands of Orlac, we made up for with 1924's Waxworks. This screening took us to the McKees Rocks neighborhood in the Parkway Theater on October 1st, 2024. This screening was part of the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival was a co-production of Jump Cut Theater with the Parkway Theater and Film Lounge. The Parkway Theater is a great venue I'm very, very familiar with. It's a fantastic independent movie theater, but it also is so much more. It hosts live music, comedy, and sports watch-alongs in addition to the full schedule of indie film screenings and bigger films also. I super love their commitment to local filmmakers, and as someone who does film work on the side, it's really unbelievably cool to see something you had a hand in aired on a big screen. So, long story short, show the Parkway Theater and Film Lounge some love out there, all you Pittsburghers and Western Pennsylvanians. Now, since we're setting the scene, let's talk about the biggest and most pleasant surprise of the evening. That would be the musical accompaniment of DJ Zombo. I was incredibly curious, yet excited, when I heard the Waxworks was getting accompaniment from a DJ. Oh, the great times you'll have when you go into events and experiences with an open mind. And boy, it was actually indeed a great time as advertised. Now, the music of Zombo and his patented Zombotron will be getting a deep dive momentarily, but first, Let's have some movie discussion first. Let's talk about the silent film era and how it saw the start of many, many trends out there. But one trend it started that I never thought of was the wax museum horror genre, as well as the anthology film. Lots of trailblazing occurred over the course of this 77-minute runtime, and the course of 3 mini stories. Now, there is a lot to enjoy about this film. First, there is no German expressionist film that isn't fun to watch visually. There was so much cool stuff going on with each segment's distinct look and feel. This was also a film about performances, and that cast definitely shined. This is Paul Lenny-directed film featured 3 huge names in German cinema of the time. Waxworks is an anthology picture with stories linked by an overarching story about a writer, played by William Dieterle. This fella accepts a job from a Waxworks owner to write a series of stories about the exhibits in order to boost business. This is where those big names come into play. The stories revolve around the Caliph of Baghdad, played by Emil Jannings, Ivan the Terrible, played by Conrad Veidt, and the Jack the Ripper type, played by Werner Krauss. Before we get into the film talk proper, let's take a closer look at the music behind the screening. Chad Hunter, the force behind both the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society and the Pittsburgh Silent Film Fest, wanted live accompaniment to take center stage alongside this year's cinematic offerings. And I can't agree more. There is a certain magic to seeing these classic films with live music. And things get even cooler when the music is not the stereotypical type of music you'd expect. And DJ Zombo's performance was definitely an unexpected treat in that vein. Now, Michael Devine, aka DJ Zombo, wowed the crowd with some really cool, yet unexpected music in a performance that was quite unexpected by Devine himself. When I asked him how he got this gig in the Silent Film Fest and how it came along, the musician explained, "It pretty much came out of nowhere. I was asked to DJ music for the film. However, over the pandemic, I began to make experimental music again. Only this time the technology had gone through the roof. And using programs like Logic and Pro Tools, I was able to make some rather elaborate and unsettling scores. So when I was offered the opportunity to soundtrack Waxworks, I reworked, reimagined, and fit my scores to a working copy of the film." In addition to scoring the film, he turned out to be quite a fan of the film as well. The film itself is more of a work of art to see rather than take it in like a regular movie, he told me. I was more fascinated with the imagery rather than the story, kind of like interpreting a dream. Now, Devine has been fascinated by the world of music from a young age. His interests run the wide spectrum of genres and performance. With the Waxworks score, I returned to my avant-garde and electronic roots, Devine recalls. In my teens, I really didn't have any musical training or even much in the department of musical instruments. I learned how to make primitive synths from old radios, tape recorders, and feedback loops. My goal was to try to make these odd sounds into more than layers of noise. Then with my first electric guitar, I was more interested in what odd sounds I could get it to make due to my lack of proper playing. I learned sound-on-sound recordings using several tape recorders and made what I considered interesting. After learning the guitar and bass, my bands were surf rock, rockabilly, and garage. I then smashed them together under the umbrella of polka and learned the accordion. One of the coolest parts of a DJ Zombo performance is the magical Zombotron. Going into the show, I had heard bits and pieces about this piece of art and music, but was really unsure what to expect. Post-show, I was lucky enough to get some up-close looks at the machine. Devine was also nice enough to give me a little history of it, and what a story that is. Devine explains, "The Zombotron came about after I sold all my vinyl and physical media and went strictly into using a laptop to DJ clubs. I did this fairly early, and it was considered not real DJing by other DJs at the time. In the early 2000s, I had an art gallery. It featured local pop artists, and rather than get a commission on their sales, I would get a free piece of artwork. One artist painted a new coffin as artwork and left it in the gallery. Another artist wanted to turn it into a barbecue grill. He was a fabricator and can make cool stuff, so I had the idea of him making me a shell for my laptop to look like a combination time machine and jukebox. That became the Zombotron, and I traded the coffin for it. As someone without a lick of musical or rhythmic talent, I cannot even imagine what it's like to devise and create a piece of music. So naturally, I had to pick the talented DJ Zombo's brain about that creative process. I would watch and rewatch the film, testing out sections of my music, he told me. Then I learned how to edit it on the fly so I could mix it live. It was a bit nerve-wracking, being that I have never done anything like that before. And that is all, folks out there. That is all before taking that performance live in front of a live studio audience. And to add an extra degree of difficulty to the proceedings, all of these great tunes had to be performed in perfect sync with Waxworks as it played on screen. Devine takes us into his mindset when he explains, "The tricky part was watching the film while adjusting and mixing the score, while also watching the audience to get a feel if they felt it was working with the film. Then, on top of that, trying to enjoy it myself." In an article for silentfilm.org, Cheryl Eddy talks about the horror genres Waxworks laid the groundwork for. Eddy writes, "Paul Lenny's last film in Germany before moving to Hollywood, where he defined the old dark house genre, Waxworks is often cited as striking a balance between art house and genre film, which almost makes it a precursor to the so-called elevated horror movies." Eddy continues, "But Waxworks is also a more direct ancestor of the enduringly popular creepy waxwork horror subgenre, which delights in plots about murder victims being transformed into suspiciously lifelike wax statues, or wax statues that come to life and start murdering people, or both. Now, it's always fascinating to see how the genres of film we love today can trace their origins back to the earliest days of cinema. You sometimes forget these lineages until you're sitting in a theater watching a 100-year-old film and start to see some similarities and see the earliest stages of stuff you've come to love and know today. Now, if you want to find out more about Michael Devine, aka Zombo, aka DJ Zombo, and his musical exploits and adventures, we will have all the info in the show description, and we'll be providing links on our various social medias. It all starts at www.zomboco.com. That is www.zomboco.com. And that will lead you to all of his goings-ons, performances, everything basically he's got going on, and links to his Facebook and Instagram. He is so incredibly worth a follow, and we hope to see you at one of his concerts soon. Now, with the screenings we did get to enjoy out of the way, let's look at a few more we unfortunately had to miss. The following 3 films were films we really wanted to catch, but fate had other plans. Regardless of whether we were there or not, we still want to talk about these great events and give them the spotlight they so richly deserve. The next movie to chat about was 1924's The Hands of Orlok, another showing we unfortunately had to miss in person. Now, this is where that Mother Nature stuff comes into play. Thursday night throughout the weekend was a pretty sick one for me. And not sick in a totally rad way, sick in a feeling terribly ill way. So we had to forego some screenings that we were initially really excited for. But being the diligent podcasters we are, folks, the show must go on, and we will still talk about these totally rad events. Thursday, October 3rd at 7:30 was the screening of the Conrad Veidt starring film, The Hands of Orlok. This 1924 picture was directed by the legendary Robert Vine. The director and star are probably both best known for their contributions to the 1920 German expressionist and horror classic Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. This event took place at the Lindsay Theater and featured live accompaniment by the Pittsburgh Composers Quartet. Definitely a bummer to have to miss that one, as it sounded like a really cool event, and the pictures I saw after the fact really made me jealous. Now, the next one up was probably the one I was most disappointed to miss out of the whole week-long event. That would be Grass, A Nation's Battle for Life. To add insult to injury, this was held at the Frick Museum, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite places to watch silent films. If, like us, you had never heard of the film, you more than likely have heard of its director, Marion C. Cooper. This 1925 documentary film follows a branch of the Bakhtari tribe of Lurs in Persia as they and their herds make the seasonal journey to greener pastures. It is considered one of the earliest ethnographic documentary films. Much like DJ Zombo earlier, this screening came with accompanying music I was unfamiliar with. The live original score is performed by Iranian santur player Mahtab Nadalian. The santur is a hammered dulcimer of Iranian origins. Again, I was so bummed to miss this performance. Nadalian is a graduate of the College of Fine Arts in the University of Tehran. Since 2014, Nadalian has performed in San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Houston, and Pittsburgh. And to add that it was all going down in the Frick Museum only added to how awesome I imagine it actually was. This screening was presented at the Frick Pittsburgh in conjunction with their Treasured Ornament exhibition. In 1997, Grass was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival is also incomplete without a stop in the Lawrenceville neighborhood of Pittsburgh and the Row House Movie Theater. This was another one I was super anxious to experience live and in person, only to have to sit it out. I believed and clapped my hands, but alas, it was not meant to be. The film in question is the first cinematic adaptation of Peter Pan, being screened at the famous Row House Cinemas in Lawrenceville on Saturday, October 5th, 2024. This is a great theater to enjoy a film or silent film at, and it's a bonus that they share a love of silent films with us. Continuing on the topic of live scores, this one was performed by the always incredible Tyler Stoner. I've seen Tyler do some great work with scoring the 1914 Russian silent The Woman of Tomorrow. This Betty Bronson starring adaptation, however, was originally released on December 29, 1924. It was directed by Herbert Brennan and starred a whole host of silent film legends. In addition to Bronson, there was Ernest Torrance, Mary Bryan, Esther Ralston, and Anna Mae Wong. Pretty star-studded, if you ask me. Like many films of the era, Peter Pan was destined to be long lost. Since there was no National Film Archive in the United States or anyone championing film preservation back in that era, its outlook was bleak. It was dim. Paramount really had no interest in the long-term distribution of film, leading to most copies of Peter Pan being destroyed over the years. Luckily, though, for that Row House crowd on October 5th, and audiences all over the world, that demise was averted. For decades, the film was thought to be lost. In the 50s, James Card, film restorer and curator for the George Eastman House in Rochester, New York, discovered a well-preserved copy in a vault at the Eastman School of Music and made a preservation of that source. That started the ball rolling as other versions and bits would be discovered, all leading us to a vibrant, fantastical film for audiences of all ages to enjoy. While we were unable to attend nearly as many events as we originally planned on, it was still great to experience what we did. Both films were incredible events worthy of their spot in such a banger of a lineup. This is always one of the highlights of the cinematic year for us here at the Golden Silent Films podcast here in Pittsburgh, and it never disappoints. It warms the heart to see so many sellouts in various packed houses in only the second year of the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival. The love and appreciation of silent film grows every single day, and the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society is doing amazing work fostering and growing that love here in Western Pennsylvania and beyond. So, with the Pittsburgh Silent Film Fest 2024 edition wrapped up and a week-long celebration of silent movies in the books, it's time for the Golden Silent Films podcast gang here to finally get some sleep, rest, relaxation, and recuperation. We hope you enjoyed this mini travelogue across the silver screen hotspots of Pittsburgh and maybe enticed you to make the journey here next year and watch some of these classic silent films with us. Before we say goodbye and farewell, we must thank every one, person, and venue involved with the Pittsburgh Silent Film Festival. A big thanks goes out to Chad Hunter, who was the person responsible for the concept of a silent film fest here in Pittsburgh to begin with. People here love their silent films, and he does so much cool stuff to really spread that love. If you're interested in learning more, head to pittsburghsilentfilmsociety.org, where you can find out all kinds of information on screenings and events here in the Pittsburgh area. It was a great week with a lot of great people putting in time, effort, and love to keep the magic of silent movies alive. And a super huge thank you goes out to Michael Devine, whom you can find more about him at zomboco.com. If you've forgotten, he is a man of many talents. If you're here in Pittsburgh or the Western Pennsylvania area, you can catch him live in concert on the radio airwaves or as host on the stages of Steel City Con and Living Dead Weekend. A true Renaissance man worthy of a follow, and you get to see some pics of the legendary Zombotron. Now, we would be remiss in not thanking the Pittsburgh Silent Film Society again for always putting on a top-notch film festival that celebrates all things silent film. And if you want more information on all of the great stuff they are doing, again, check out pittsburghsilentfilmsociety.org. Do you like our coverage of silent film live screenings? How did you spend your Silent Movie Day 2024? What awesome film festivals are you out there attending here in 2025? Let us know all that and more at the various social media spots of the Golden Silent Films podcast. It's been a long week of events, so if you have forgotten, we are on Instagram, Bluesky, and Twitter, and YouTube. Let us know what you think of this episode. What silent and silent-related movies, past or present, do you want us to look at next? Our world of silent movie knowledge and experience is constantly growing, and we need your input for future episodes here as we celebrate our 5th year and 5th season. You can always find us here at Golden Silence Cast on Instagram, at Golden Silence Cast on Bluesky, and at Golden Silence 1 on Twitter. And again, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any other podcast outlet that allows it, subscribe, rate, and review. It does a lot for our visibility, and we love hearing your thoughts and ideas. We really, really appreciate all of your incredible support, and seeing how much you folks are listening out there only makes us want to make bigger and better episodes. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube. We are stuck on a pesky 22 subscribers, and we want to see that number tick up a bit. We hope you've had as much fun on this journey as we did traveling around the city of Pittsburgh to make it, and watching movies. Don't forget that lots of movies were watched by lots of people. Unfortunately, not as many by us, but a lot of people enjoyed a lot of silent films in Pittsburgh. With all that being said, thank you to all of you fine listeners out there for all of your fine listening. And don't forget, the silents are golden, and the talkies, they're just a fad. And support your local theaters and see silent films live.